The reading is taken from Proverbs 31, verses 10 to 31. It can be found on page 668. A wife of noble character, who can find? She is worth far more than rubies. Her husband has full confidence in her and lacks nothing of value. She brings him good, not harm, all the days of her life. She selects wool and flax and works with eager hands. She is like the merchant ships, bringing her food from afar. She gets up while it is still night. She provides food for her family and portions for her female servants. She considers a field and buys it. Out of her earnings, she plants a vineyard. She sets about her work vigorously. Her arms are strong for her tasks. She sees that her trading is profitable and her lamp does not go out at night. In her hand she holds a distaff and grasps the spindle with her fingers. She opens her arms to the poor and extends her hands to the needy. When it snows, she has no fear for her household, for all of them are clothed in scarlet. She makes coverings for her bed. She is clothed in fine linen and purple. Her husband is respected at the city gate, where he takes his seat among the elders of the land. She makes linen garments and sells them, and supplies the merchants with sashes. She is clothed with strength and dignity. She can laugh at the days to come. She speaks with wisdom, and faithful instruction is on her tongue. She watches over the affairs of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children arise and call her blessed, her husband also, and he praises her. Many women do noble things, but you surpass them all. Charm is deceptive and beauty is fleeting, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Honor her for all that her hands have done, and let her works bring her praise at the city gate. This is the word of the Lord.
Of course, today and tomorrow, what is it? They reckon 1 million plus people will be out about on our streets for Carnival. At its best, Carnival is about creativity and community and solidarity, coming together, celebrating what's good and standing for what matters. But, again, Jen's referenced this already, you don't need me to remind you that there is a dark side of humanity that is always going to be expressed when you get a big gathering, anything as big as Carnival. And so we prayed last week, and we will pray again this week, that God will be at work to restrain evil so that there can be the celebration of the good. He's already been very kind with the weather today and the forecast for tomorrow. The dark side we looked at a bit last week in Proverbs chapter 1. It talks there about peer pressure and knife crime, the temptation to engage in theft or violence under the cover of a crowd in the belief that you can get away with it. And wisdom in Proverbs says, in the short term you might get away with it, but actually long term it will catch up with you. And Jen's reference that is what some need to take on board this weekend. I don't think any in the room, though, have come to Notting Hill today in order to engage in that. Many, many more people, and this is where we might be a bit more tempted. Many people today and tomorrow will be living out the dark side of what we humans are capable of by pushing themselves to the extreme with alcohol, with drugs, with partying, seeking a chemical or experiential high. What are we assuming about the world when we do that? It's not just Carnival by any means. It's the same sort of thing that when people get totally immersed in anything, really. It might be in clubbing, it might be in football, it might be in skiing, it might be in shopping, it might be in any one of a number of things. when a good thing, like the things we've listed, becomes for that person in that moment the ultimate thing, the only thing, the thing that they give themselves totally to, and actually starts to take over in life. So today, if you think about the positive of Carnival, getting together with friends, listening to great music, having a drink, having a dance in the sun, all the positive vibes that gives, that's fantastic, isn't it? But when something good like that becomes the ultimate, the thing that people have been living for months before they get there, the thing that actually, because it's Carnival, I can do things that I wouldn't do normally. Something good has become ultimate, at least for that moment. So last weekend we heard Wisdom's invitation, end of chapter 1, to come to her and learn, especially if we're young. And her advice, I think, this weekend for Carnival would be enjoy the music, enjoy the colour, the food, the crowd. But remember, it's only Carnival. In the same way, on another occasion, she'd be saying, it's only football. It's only shopping. It's only something good in life. It's not all that life is about. It's not the most important thing in life, because she begins the book in chapter 1, verse 7. It's echoed in the second to last verse as well. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. He's the one that we should have at the centre of our thinking, our living. He's the one that actually we should have an overarching and overwhelming passion for, because when we are consumed with passion for God, other things will fit in their right place. That's the wise perspective, the Bible perspective. We can enjoy Carnival and football and shopping and skiing and work and holidays and all the rest of the good things that God gives in life without any of those things taking over as the ultimate thing. Because God is the ultimate. And when we recognize that and then trust in him and look to him in faith and dependence, we receive from him the daily grace to live, the way to kind of go through life and manage the highs and the lows and enjoy life and make the most of it. That's what the Bible's about. That's what this book of Proverbs is about, as it introduces us to this character of wisdom. The book itself, if you've not tuned in before, is a father and a mother teaching their son to be wise on how the world works and how to live well in the world. And at various points, wisdom is personified as this remarkable lady. And so when we reach the end of the book and we meet the wife of noble character who is worth far more than any kind of financial riches, we recognize her straight away. We say, yes, we've met this lady before. This is wisdom we're meeting again in a final form in this final chapter. And it's an encouragement as we close the book to make wisdom our lifelong companion, to marry wisdom, as well as some very helpful things on what to look for in a marriage partner. But it's saying we want wisdom in our life, for the whole of our life. Wisdom is female because she is right through the book. But to underline that this is for men and women, and that we all actually want to be like her, we all want her in our lives. The word translated noble character here in verse 11 is used in the book of Ruth to describe both Ruth herself and Boaz, her eventual husband. So actually this is about something that's for us all. And look with me, let's focus in on Lady Wisdom, because when we do, she is really stunning. Verse 11, her husband, thankfully, knows and recognizes how valuable she is. He's got full confidence in her, because, verse 12, she brings him nothing but good. Verse 13, she's a busy lady. She's spinning wool and flax, making clothes for the family. And they're not only clothes, they're made from the finest fabrics, because she's sourced them. Verse 24 suggests that they are fabulous clothes because she sells them on to distributors to then sell in the markets. When it comes to food, verse 14 she buys the best. She knows the right recipes. Verse 15, she does whatever it takes, not only to feed her family, but to make sure that the people who work for her are looked after. Verse 16, she manages the investment portfolio. And verse 27, watches over the affairs of her household. She was working from home long before anyone else thought of doing that, because back then the home was the place of business as well as the family. It was a place of enterprise and education and everything else. And she's not just looking out for her own. Verse 20, she looks after the poor and the needy. So this woman we meet at the end of Proverbs, she has her own clothing line. She's a businesswoman, a chef, a nutritionist, a philanthropist, as well as a wife and mother. It's pretty impressive, isn't it? But it's also pretty practical, and every day it's making life work, which is what this whole book of wisdom is about. And so it is that as we find our place in the world in relation to God, the ultimate one, and that's the right one to have as our ultimate, as we find that relationship and are governed by what he says, then we will have the wisdom to go through life and navigate the highs and the lows without relying on a series of sort of chemical or experiential highs to get us through a month or a year, followed by the predictable crashes and lows. No, knowing God and getting things in the right place will mean that our lives will be transformed by a relationship with him, and we're equipped to live well in all of life's circumstances, with all the highs and lows, knowing that he's always with us. There's a little phrase in the New Testament in one of the letters that puts some of this across. It has a contrast. It says, "Do not get drunk on wine, which leads to debauchery. Instead, be filled with the Spirit," with the Holy Spirit. Do you see the contrast? Instead of going for the experiential chemical high, which is why human beings go for it, it feels great in the moment. But instead of that, there's something much better, which is to be being filled with God's Holy Spirit. And then if it doesn't cause you a problem, have a drink, but don't kind of live for that. Don't live for the party. Enjoy the party, but don't live for it, because you're already living for the ultimate, for our God. That's the principle here, right through Proverbs. It's right through the Bible, of course. And actually, God celebrates when we live life like that. He celebrates when we live well in the world. And so, verse 25, this wife of noble character, she isn't just clothed well physically. She's clothed with strength and dignity. When other people are terrified about what's coming this winter, she can laugh at the days to come and live free without fear. She's practical, prepared, making life work, stunning. We want to be like this woman, don't we? We want to be like wisdom, and we want her wisdom in our lives, in our relationships. If we're single and hoping to meet someone, we want to marry someone like this, don't we? Male or female. But all of us, to build on this foundation, it will make for successful relationships, stable families, a life worth living. Gentlemen, if any of you are married to a woman who Proverbs 31 reminds you of, or those of us in the room, if we are the son or the daughter of a woman who is a little bit like Proverbs 31, then look with me at verse 28. It's lovely. Her children arise and call her blessed. Her husband also, and he praises her. Isn't that lovely? That the culture of the family, to praise that mum, to praise that wife. And the same would be true if your dad or your husband. I'm going to go home and see mum and dad later today. And having just read this and thought about it, I think I will try and articulate why I appreciate them what they've given me over the years. It's a great culture to have in any family, a willingness to praise and compliment one another, and so too in our church family. Not just saying immediate things, oh, you look nice today, new earrings. Go deeper. I think this is the encouragement. And actually say, you're a brilliant mum. I'm I'm appreciative of the way you're always there, just so constant, however you're feeling. Or you're a brilliant boss. It's amazing the way you run this business. It's actually a great place to work. It's really impressive how hard you work to make sure that your family have everything that they need, and actually you have stuff to give away as well. Now, we could say that of a number of the women sitting here this morning and those who couldn't make it today, in the way that they work and live and bringing up their families. We could say it of a number of the men, and we should. Proverbs 31:28 is saying, what a great culture. Let's actually compliment one another and encourage one another where we're doing well. But actually, this chapter, this book, is about celebrating wisdom herself, praising wisdom, rather than all the things that are praised and that people do invest in, the immediate things. Actually, no, praising wisdom, even though her fruit only comes long term. It's about making the whole of life work, celebrating what's wise and godly and good, and listening to her, listening to the Bible's wisdom. Because you see, as we praise and celebrate wisdom, we'll become a bit more like her, we'll be her children, as it were, and we'll actually be much more likely, if we're looking to get into a romantic relationship, we'll be much more likely to marry someone like her. But one last thing, just to conclude today and to where this book gets to. We've actually got another couple of weeks. If you're part of St Helens, we're going to have a couple more weeks just dipping into a couple of things that we've skipped over so far in Proverbs. But just the flow of the book, and it felt right to do that today, it gets us to this point of this elevated figure, this Lady Wisdom in all of her beauty. But of course, our reaction will be, well, that's great, but it isn't ideal, isn't it? It's actually, I've said if your mum is a bit like this or your wife is a bit like this, but I've said a bit like, because you think, well, all these different things combined into one person, well, goodness me, that's remarkable. We've never met anyone quite like that. And you see, that gap between the ideal and the reality highlights why we need not just the ideal, not just the vision, which we have here, but we need the gospel about Jesus, who actually did embody all of this. Jesus is described in the New Testament as Christ our wisdom, because he is the true Son, who actually does live in fear of the Lord, honouring God, devoting himself to God, living life in God's way, in God's world. He's the true Son. He's the true Son who brings delight to his Father in heaven. And more than that, in all kinds of ways, he is wisdom made flesh. He embodies wisdom in his words and in his actions. So when we turn to the Gospels and we read of Jesus, we see and hear and his understanding of how the world works, his insight into people. And we can say, yeah, that really is wisdom. That is practical, real, earthly wisdom. And we can say, yeah, I want to be like that. I want to be like him. But the one decision Jesus makes, which is a surprise, is when Jesus chooses a wife, according to the New Testament, who does he choose? And you're thinking, oh gosh, is this a conspiracy theory? Is this sort of Dan Brown's latest novel? No. Theologically, the New Testament talks about Jesus' bride as the church. That Jesus is the bridegroom, and the church, people like you and me, is who he commits himself to, devotes himself to, and marries. People who, speaking personally, are anything but wise a lot of the time. And this glorious reversal of Christ our wisdom, not choosing to marry his equal, but choosing to marry us lot and make us like him, paying for us first of all, paying for us sinners to come back to God, and then giving us his Holy Spirit to transform us and lift us and make us more like him. Well, that is astonishing. That is the love of God in action. And so the ultimate wisdom for any of us is to receive that love, to receive his Holy Spirit, to let him fill us and to lead us in life, and to make us wise. And whether you're off to Carnival today or whether you're doing something else entirely, let's make this God our passion, our ultimate, for all of life. Let's trust and receive and be filled with his Holy Spirit. Be being filled was that verse I quoted. Filled with his Spirit, living by his wisdom. That's the vision of the good life. It equips us for all the highs and for all the lows, knowing that he's with us in and through them all.